Welcome to the Centaur Podcast. I'm Cameron Adibi, and I interview humans about their spiritual journey with horses. Some days the stars all line up, other days they don't. This interview was magical, and the stars lined up. I got to interview Kim McElroy. She's an award-winning equine artist renowned for her visionary, artistic, and written creations. Blessed by her horse mentors, she is the illustrator of the Way of the Horse wisdom cards. She lives in Kingston, Washington. Kim and I focused our conversation on this beautiful new deck of cards and guidebook that her and Sandra Wallen just released. It's called the Council of Horses Oracle, and it is a 40-card deck and guidebook. And just to quote Kim, it's so much more, but it is a tool and guidance for horses and people to improve their interactions and relationships in their own lives. Also very special for this interview, I asked Kim to do a reading for Romeo, who is a 14-year-old miniature horse who I work with. It was super sweet. I'd love you to listen to this and maybe give you some ideas for the horses you work with or any of the animals you work with. Enjoy.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kim. Thanks so much. And this is such an honor. And, I'm going to have to start right in because here we are talking through a computer screen. It's just it makes me crack up every time. And I listened, read a little bit about your background, and so I'm guessing you're close to my age, or, you lived part of your life without technology. And like I did.
Yes.
And I say we're like the last of this, people that have experienced half our lives without this digital media and digital kind of communication. I've never met you in person. I thank you, Mary Ann Simons, for introducing us. This is like, I'm going to jump right in. This is like,
yay.
This is the spirit of the horse right here. We're communicating without ever, with this through this kind of like, you're an image of somewhere in the other part of the world. Washington, I think.
Right.
Yes. Washington, yeah. I'm here in Massachusetts. So 3-hour time difference. Does this still freak you out? But how do you connect that with the spirit of the horse that we can?
Good question. Well, of course, what's interesting to me is that, here you and I are on a picture Zoom call, so we can see each other, but I know also that the audience won't be able to see us. So it makes it easier to communicate because you're using body language, as well as, and for when we were trying to communicate, we couldn't hear each other, but we were still using body language to say, I can't hear you. And can you call the other thing? And I'm like reading your lips. So, I think, it's a similar thing in that sense. Like, at least with pictures, we can start to interpret. It was almost like that'd be a fascinating thing to do, is just have a Zoom call and not use words, right?
That's like that. There again. That's that's what I still feel like the horses teach us so well, the nonverbal communication just through language. Through body energy. Just energy.
And visual, right? Yeah, energy and visual.
Yeah.
And so, and then to the listener, they're going on inflection of the tone, of our voices as to what our character might be like or who we are, and their imagination. So that's a whole other nonverbal in the sense of taking what we say and then pulling it into their own experiences and their own body, and resonating vibrationally in that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we made this work somehow. Thank you. I do this, partly as a, help others do this, but still, like, I'm half my life. I had none of this, like my first computer was like a Apple Macintosh, like 1983. So I'm dating myself right there. But
right.
Yeah. And the other video game I played was Pong. That was,
yep.
I hear from people that's still popular.
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man. Yeah. And now I'm I'm trying to run from it, but here we are. Because
Mhm.
I'm grateful. This is a way we get to communicate. So I am grateful for it at the same time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
me too.
yeah. So it's interesting. We here we are talking about horses, and half our life has been without technology for the majority. Technological influences like there are now. But I really I can spend 3 podcasts talking to you about this incredible gift, and I got it just a couple weeks ago. This the Council of Horses Oracle, a 40 card deck and guidebook by you and Sandra Wallen. I have some questions for you, but I was just thinking about this as I was and I've playing around. I didn't read your guidebook. That's how I do things. I just went right to
Mhm,
the right
mhm.
to the cards, and now
Right?
I'm reading the guidebook, and I'm like, wow, there's some good great stuff in there. But the cards are phenomenal. But this is collaborative progress. But I have just to start with, this is a deck of cards, and and I think I've heard from Marianne. You are also a writer, poet, but it's like I think of a house of cards, or
Uh-huh. Yeah.
like playing cards, or like gambling. So it's like chance and fate and winning and losing, and this is nothing about there's nothing about chance here and winning or losing. So I mean, I was going to ask you right off the bat, like, what would you really call these?
Uh, Talismans.
Okay, all right,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good,
Keystones. Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah. They just happen to be printed on paper and they convey the image that I intended, just like our Zoom call, has an image to it, but the listener or the reader does have the opportunity to see the image first, usually, before they read something about it. And it has its own messages in the nonverbal as well. The art is that nonverbal part of us and our right brain and our intuition and subconscious and unconscious mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much to unpack here. So again, I try to stay on topic as best I can, so because my mind will wander. But I'm very interested first in the background, and can you explain a little bit how you? So this is a group effort, as
Yes.
most good projects, including all these many horses, both physically and mythologically. But there's a few physical ones here, which I read the intro. But can you first explain how you and Sandra met, and how this idea emerged?
Yeah, absolutely. So we met. It was sort of a grand conjunction, actually, of amazing beings coming together. I was just starting. I had been doing my art career, painting horses exclusively, for at that point it would have been gosh, about 8 years. And I was I had just gotten my first horse, Dharma, who is in the deck as well. It about also 8 years prior. Just well, sorry. Let me think here. So I got my mare in 90. So I'd been doing my career longer. I started in 1987. I can't do math and talk at the same time. So I started my career in 1987. I met my first horse in 1996. And then in 2005 is when I met Sandra Wallen and Linda Kohanov. And Linda Kohanov is maybe familiar to many of your listeners. She has written 5 books now on the horse-human bond and the amazing science and intuition connections that we have with horses. And Sandra has a equine assisted learning center in Maple Ridge, BC, Canada. And she was hosting and co-facilitating a workshop with Linda Kohanov at her ranch and her farm. And uh, I had just met a friend named Connie Funk, who was also on this same path as I was of learning from horses. And I had connected with Linda Kohanoff in 2000, actually, so that would have been like 5 years before, um, in in the field that she was teaching of equine facilitated learning. And she had written the Tao of Equus, which was her first book, and just a groundbreaking book for anyone who's ever, been curious about the depth of, what horses are here to teach us. And she had interviewed me for a story about my mare Dharma, so I knew of her, and I had connected with her before. And so this grand conjunction happened where this amazing, because of the gift of my friend Connie, who knew Sandra and said, "You've got to come to this workshop." And I said, "Well, I can't. I've already signed up for another workshop with another facilitator that was Linda's apprentice. And I had paid the deposit, and I was like, God, I wish I could have gone. That would have been amazing. Of course, I want to meet Linda Kohanoff, but how do I get out of this other thing?" And so she took my I wish and turned it into reserving a spot for me at that workshop. She added my name to the waiting list. And about a month later, I got this phone call that said, you can come." And I said, "Come where?" And it was amazing. So I, of course, dropped everything because I was like, this is meant to be. And looking back, it's amazing to think that, that I met such, two very powerful women at that event. And it really changed my life in many ways, not only meeting them and and that led to projects with both of them, but also being involved in learning from Linda Kohanoff and her techniques and work with horses was the first time I began to experience in my body, mind, body, spirit, the healing power of horses in a way that I began to recognize how I could dialogue with them about myself. I had spent my life up to that point in my artistic career really, I until I got my first horse, even just always feeling like I was connected to horses. They were always a part of my spirit and heart, but I didn't have a lot of physical experiences with them, and actually quite rare. So the times I had encounters with horses were incredibly memorable, and I recorded each, breath, each moment that was spent with them, but it wasn't a part of my life until I got my horse. But then when I got my first horse, she was an ex-race horse, and that's a whole other story. But her healing from her traumatic past of being a racehorse became my first priority. So in some ways, being with her was like going from, from not knowing anything to rocket science about how do you navigate with this huge being that's quite athletic and has a lot of fear and is overstimulated, and how to stay, present in that and be safe. And then so the idea of learning from horses or receiving guidance from them hadn't even occurred to me at that point because I was so busy just navigating the physical reality with horses. And so going away to this workshop and being present and learning how to be grounded and centered and receive in a safe environment from horses that were teachers and healers and had that kind of presence and calm uh, way of imparting their information just really was transformational for me, just to receive that guidance and wisdom from them, and then learning that I could access that with them in present moment in the space with them, rather than in my imagination, in my art studio or in my drawing as I'm drawing the spirit of a horse, to stand in front of a horse and receive that and get impressions behind closed eyes for the most part, or in a setting where you're in a round pen and dialoguing with them in some kind of quiet way, or where there's a dialogue going on. That was totally new to me of how to be in a space with a horse and recognize that their movements and their body language and their expressions were reflection of me. So all of that was just mind blowing. And then to combine it with being in the presence of such gifted teachers was profound. So needless to say, that was a turning point for me. Um, and in that, all of that just came coalesced in me to realize very quickly, within a few weeks actually, that there was something that all of that could contain in the way that I was doing my art and the way I saw how people responded to my art, and how could that be conveyed to others, because it's sort of like everything I take in as an artist that is my own personal growth and my own healing. All I want to do is turn it around and explore how to give it back, and so that became a project that I did with Linda Kohanoff that just evolved magically from there very quickly in a series of synchronistic events where um, she and I, because of a suggestion of a bookseller, ended up realizing that we could co-create a card deck together. So that was it was Way of the Horse, Equine Archetypes for Self-Discovery. And that was published in 2000. I'm always getting it mixed up. I think it was 2005, 2007, somewhere in there. Anyway, so yeah, it was 2007. And so that started happening, and I was co-creating with Linda and just feeling completely, honored and just thrilled to be in the company of such a mentor, and learning from her, taking workshops from her, and co-creating the deck along the way. And then at the same time, I had more of a feeling of what do I do in the world? And I started teaching workshops with Sandra Wallen, and we started doing like visionary. At the beginning, it was more like teaching people how to let go of their creative angst and move into a space where they could draw themselves and allow art to come through them in the presence of horses. And that was so wonderful. And in that process, because we were working together, I was just meditating one day, and actually at her home I think we were teaching a workshop, and I was asking, what work do we have to do together? And I got this very strong vision of a guide that I had seen at other times in my early experiences of these kinds of spiritual experiences with horses in my mind's eye, and shamanic journeys that I had learned to do with all beings, but especially horses. And anyway, long story short, I had an impression from a being that I recognize, who's also in the deck. His name is Akashkua, and he's a guide that helps us with Akasha, which is spirit, and also the Akashic records. And I just got this brief impression of his powerful spirit, and then he led me to another place where there was another horse that had a name, which is rare for me to get names in my meditations. And that horse led me to another place that was like where many horses were gathered, and I just got this feeling like there's something forming here that is wanting a voice. And I expressed it to Sandra, and we both were like, this has got to be a joint project. Maybe there's something we could do here. And it's interesting because I actually hadn't put it together until recently. I was telling this story, and I was like, wow, that was before The Way of the Horse came out. So it was like two projects that were evolving. But interestingly, that was like 18 years ago. So it's only now that the Council of Horses is emerging. So so that's how it all kind of started to form, was when I when I began that journey of how do I convey what I'm learning as a novice and as an apprenticeship to horses.
Awesome. It's incredible. I mean, it's going to be chills almost. I mean, and again, Linda and Sandra, at your access. I'm very jealous. Maybe I can con you and getting me to talk with them and interview them. But,
right.
I call your deck the Herd, which you do actually in your book. But I think there's a card about patience or there's a card that
Patience is a virtue.
yeah represents
Yes.
which one which
And actually, it's interesting you bring that one up because that's Red Bear, and Red
Red
Bear
Bear.
was the horse that was the first one that appeared to me basically from the council. And at the time, again, as acolytes, in my back of my mind, I was like, a horse named Red Bear. Oh, interesting, and but he's all about yeah, patience and
Yeah.
the symbology of hibernation.
Sweet. Yeah. So you already
Hmm.
started to talk about, but that was the next question is like, what was the creative process like? Because it sounds like there's you guys really complement each other. You and Sandra, even in the intro, Sandra were was responsible for two of the cards, and I have no
Yes.
I have no better way to talk about them. They're not cards, but that's how I'm gonna have to talk
Right.
about it.
These miniature
The-
paintings that you can hold in your hand.
so
Yeah.
they were paintings, right? So that
Yes.
were digitized. But yeah, you guys complement each other. And how could you just describe a little bit more about the whole creative process, how that worked?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we knew that given especially that Way of the Horse cards had come out with Linda and had been out for some time at that point, and Linda had a very focused direction that she chose to do with her deck, which my art illustrated her concepts, and much of my art that was used for that was already created. So she found concepts that I'd been painting all those many years before that fit what she wanted to teach. And so it worked out really beautifully. And then I did 6 new works of art for that deck that were mostly her horses and my mare Dharma as well. So that deck came together in a co-creation that was had a much more sort of um, focus on the work that she was doing already. Whereas with the Council of Horses, we were have Sandra and I have both been very curious about horses in general as spiritual beings and what is their role in teaching humanity? How have they come into our myths and our stories and our imagination and our psyche um, throughout history, as well as we wanted to ground that in, the horses in our lives and what they've taught us, because our mission is really to support the well-being of humankind, but also horse kind. And that's one of the ways in which our deck is unique, because we really want to bring awareness to a broader audience and whoever is touched by this project, whether or not they're horse people, quote unquote, and actually welcome, people who, because there is this amazing, phenomenon of how horses reach out and touch people. And we had to convince the commercial world of that, because the publishers that we contacted over the years were thinking it was a niche market and it's only equestrian people who ride horses that might be interested in this, and they're this percentage of the population. And it's like, no, if you have any conversation in any grocery store, or any bookstore, or anywhere you are, you're going to meet people who are like, oh, there's something about horses, and they're going to feel that whether or not they've ever ridden a horse, much less been around them, or it's just it's in our psyche. It's part of our DNA. And so that was so how to condense that was really our biggest challenge, was how to take that incredible history of the horse and mankind and our journey together through time, and how we dominated their species in order to conquer uh, you know, others of our kind, and travel and do all these very mobile things. But who were they before that all started, and how were we connected with them, the myths and stories throughout so many cultures? I mean, once we really started researching, we could have written 10 books on the subject, because it's just vast. And so we picked some of the strongest myths that are beloved in our culture, and also chose some that were a little bit less known, like the Chinese dragon horse Langma, and the Kelpie, which is a Scottish water horse, and some other beings like that. And then along the way, we also discovered that in our meditations and musings and conceiving of how this horse-human dynamic has evolved, we began getting impressions from what we considered were other beings or other forms of consciousness that had names and identities that were almost like their own myth, that we didn't feel like we were, it's not like we were making it up. It was more like when we asked that consciousness, how do we define this aspect of horse consciousness, a being would show up and present itself to us and say, I'm the one that holds that for this space. And that was incredible. And so, I mean, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it, because it was really profound to fathom that kind of dynamic happening in this project. And then as well, the beloved horses that shared our lives, who we both had miraculous experiences with and learnings with that we could put voice to. But what's interesting again about our deck and unique about it is that all of the council of horses, the members of the herd, are speaking to the reader in the first person, because they are bringing this wisdom to you through them. It's not about them as much as it is from them. So it evolved into a first person narrative, and it feels very immediate and profound that way, because very few decks are written from that perspective. And the joy of having a card deck and an oracle deck is that it's a dialogue of beings coming together, so that the joy and synchronicity of picking a card and asking a question is just a way of inviting the conversation with that being, and it allows our subconscious and our psyche to identify principles and concepts that are more immediate to the question, and therefore seem more relevant, to what we're trying to learn in whatever issue we're working with, or whatever thing we needed reminded of. And divination is something that it's not about foretelling the future. It's something we all do, whether we're we're just driving down the freeway and we see a billboard that has a name on it that that means something to us. And even I've heard that people would open the Bible and back in like even the early times of Christianity, they had rituals. And I remember watching Cadfile, was one of my favorite series, and Cadfiles, the monks of whatever time that was would open the Bible to determine someone's guilt or innocence in that case. And what we found actually quite fascinating, which we didn't know, was that there is a word for horse divination, which was called hippomancy. And that there was times in, I think it was Celtic mythology, where horses were considered divinatory, and they would be led or at liberty through certain series of sticks that were laying on the ground, and however they walked through the sticks, that would determine what the answer to the question was. So that was really exciting when we found that out, because it was just one more synchronicity.
We should probably try to list all of those, but yeah, there's this card deck guidebook. There's so many things that are unique about it, and one of them, I've touched upon, but some of these are based on animals that have been physically in this world, and others that have not, and that's really cool. And then also, I really appreciate that you say this too. This is really for anyone. It's not just for anybody that has a horse or leases a horse or rides. This is anyone can access, because you mentioned it so well. It's in our DNA, and how we have coexisted with this animal and others, but especially this one, and to our own well-being. But yeah, the thing I have to ask, and we're going to look at these cards here in a second. We're going to pull a card, but is there one card that I have to ask this because I'm still new and just playing around, but there was one card that came right out of the deck and popped right in the storyteller.
Right, jumps out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I shared that with you by email. So is there just one card, one of these that kind of keeps reappearing for you?
It's interesting because I myself, even though we created this deck over the last uh many years, it really started to form around 2015, 2016 even. So it's been you know, written and rewritten and rewritten and then created and created and painted and everything. But in the process of doing this for others, I myself haven't had the opportunity to use the card deck because I've really been as much as I'd like, because it's been like a week ago that it launched and I got my own decks about a month ago. So I am just delving in as new as anyone, finding out what these cards mean for me. So it's really fascinating and I love it because I didn't know how it would feel having created this, having co-created this, that it would again, like standing in front of the horses and having these conversations is different than having written it. It's different than having painted it. And even though the work is mine and ours, it still has a unique message every single time, whether, whatever card I choose. So the card I like to bring sort of first to people's attention because it answers, I think, what we were just talking about, which is what is our connection with horses. And it also brings forth that amazing group consciousness of what we feel is the group consciousness of horses that manifests as the horse. And in this case, it was a being we called Mythic Horse, and he called himself Mythic Horse. And that kind of, so let me pull that card and I'll show you a picture of it, and then I can read a little bit about it because it's in the artwork, there's some symbology that people might not catch right off when they look at the card. But if they look closely, and that's why it's so nice to hear the stories behind the cards, because there's more than meets the eye. So it's almost impossible to see on the card, but here's the
Yep.
card.
I pulled that one once, and I'll make a highlight of it
Great.
in post editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
beautiful, and it looks like a pyramid in the back.
Yes.
And with the sun rising or setting, one of the two,
whichever it is.
Yeah.
And that rays of light. And then what you don't see, which I don't think even my camera can see, but if you look with your naked eye, you will see there are symbols on the horse, which come across in the original and the prints more than the card. But that's cool. It's like it's hidden. And the symbols, the publisher did a beautiful job of pulling out some of the symbols. And what they are is human languages that convey in five of the most ancient languages, like Chinese, Greek, and Sanskrit, the word horse. And what we did in what we received from this being was we got these impressions, and it was so beautiful because we both got the same symbology and different meditations that was coinciding. And we felt like he is the holder of the wisdom of the horse throughout time, and that he is interacting with our species consciousness as he holds horseness and everything that we relate to horseness, our beloved movies and what Black Beauty and the things that are written about the horses and things we think about horses, that those visionary and imaginary and real dialogues of how we feel about horses like play on his coat like a movie. Like we both saw symbols, like instead of tattoos, they were more like symbology that would appear and disappear throughout his form, like he was a walking record of the horse. But it was interactive with our dynamic of why we love horses, and again speaking to not only those who are with horses in their lives, but the 80-year-old woman who's sitting, on her porch and wishing, remembering that she once petted a horse when she was a child, or it's just amazing how they touch us. And whenever anyone's ever had an encounter with a horse, they never forget it. So I'd love to read a little bit if we have time,
100%. That's another question.
just to speak to that.
Well, that's another question about the guidebook, because I finally read it, by the way. But even though I'm a writer, but I went right for
Which
the
is
cards.
awesome. Yeah, the cards have their own messages.
But so the book, like you said in the intro, you can just read the guidebook. You don't even need to pull a card because there's so much wisdom and knowledge. So was that also?
Or pick the book at random.
Yeah, was
like open to a page at random.
Was that also jointly written by both of you? Okay.
Yes, it was. Some essays were mine, some were Sandra's, and many of them were ours together. And that was an interesting process, being a co-writer, of and dialoguing back and forth about what we wanted to include, how to word it, how to voice it, how to organize it, how to present it to the publisher, and how to present it to the reader, and really what the horses were telling us and how to translate that. So that was a journey in and of itself. And so I'll just show that this is the guidebook from the deck. It's a deck of 40 cards. So you can show this too later, but here's it, like the deck that's the back of the cards, and then the beautiful box that it's all included in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you do all pastel, correct? All
pastel.
Yes, yeah. I think I heard that with your interview with Warwick Schiller, which was that was a good interview. But yeah, so
thank you.
Would you mind reading a little bit of the Mystic Horse, and then can we focus on this little miniature horse I asked you about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. And yes. And so each essay has key phrases, key words, and messages. The messages are for humankind as a group consciousness of humankind, but also the individual, and message for horse kind as well, which are very unique to our deck. And then there's a story and counsel. So the story, again, is written in first horse, we call it, first person of the horse, and speaking to the reader or the group that's reading it, or the horse as well. And then counsel for mythic horse. And I don't need to read all of it because I know you have limited time, but I'll just glance on a little bit of the it. So I am the mythic horse, the material and the immaterial expression of all horses who have been, who are, and those still to come. My presence brings awareness to the ancient bond that has bound horses and humans together for millennia. Ours is a connection of sacred reciprocity. I am the meta-archetype of Equus and the overarching archetype from which all others are formed. You have been taught to think that a myth or archetype is symbolic or frozen in time, but I am fluid and mutable and deeply affected by the relationship you have with my kind. The message for horse kind is history need not define you. Or sorry, that's message for humankind. History need not define you. And the message for horse kind is humanity need not define you. And some of the counsel from the mythic horse is, I appear when it is time for you to travel deep inside your humanity to help you release the reverence you hold for order and convention. Herein, you begin to make sense of the world in a different way beyond the boundaries of upbringing and education. I give voice and shape to the reasons you feel drawn to horses, even if you do not understand them. So there's a lot of insight there about people who are drawn to horses, and they find themselves in this book about horses. And each reading has contemplations, which are courageous questions that you can ask yourself about why are you being drawn to this horse guide at this time, and then an invitation that brings the reading full circle to like the essence of it. So yeah, that's just one. That's about a third of one card.
It's awesome. And it's I love it's just so, all of them are so just stunning. And so,
thank you.
Yeah. And so like what size do you do your pastels in? Is there like a stand, like kind of a rough?
Yeah, I wish
I see.
it's always hard when I've got earphones on because I have some of the paintings here in the
I
room, but
see I can see your studio
yeah,
behind you a little bit.
yeah, they're usually about 20 by 26 is sort of my average size.
Yeah.
And then Sandra did two paintings for the deck as well, and we co-created a third in which we both did work on, which is called Brumbies, the Wild Horses of Australia. And Sandra's two paintings are Enbar, the fairy horse, and Ambassador, who is a wild horse from Return to Freedom Wild Horse Sanctuary. And that's another point, which is that um, I wanted to mention is that so many of the horses we were drawn to and literally drawn to were the wild horses and their wisdom as well as the domestic horse. And we both have had really profound experiences at Wild Horse Sanctuary, which is Lompoc, California. And it's a sanctuary that rescues and gives home to horses in a wild setting that's as close as it can be to a wild herd, and as well does advocacy for horses, in trying to stop the roundups and that sort of thing. So many of the horses that spoke through us were from that sanctuary as well.
Yeah, I want to hear more about the kind of that as well. But the other part that's really just kind of, I think, so fascinating is that, this is art. I mean, this is incredible, but there's something, you're tapping into. And one of your questions, actually, I think, in your press release, and I like this question, is how do horses and art allow people to tap into their own healing? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I I discovered early on, even as a child, that art had the ability to touch people, um, to communicate feeling, and it was a just a subconscious understanding from the very beginning. And I always was doing art, so and sharing it because for me, with my personality, I'm an outgoing person. I'm not your typical artist in that sense. I'm not a subjective um, artist, so I don't hide away in the creative process and then not really want to share it with others. I'm totally the opposite. I might be introspective in my creative process, but then I can't wait to share it. Like, so it's been actually torture because some of these paintings were done a few years ago and I have not been able to show anybody until it was released. But I learned that when I started, of course, then combining horses in my art, which was relatively later in my career, you might say, or my learning. It was really in college that whole story unfolded, which made perfect sense because I played horse as a child. I was a horse in my in my spirit and didn't get to spend any time around horses, so they kind of weren't in my field of vision until I was in college and had an encounter with horses that changed everything. And so when I began combining horses and my art, I realized that they were the language that I speak. Like there was something about how I painted horses. And one of the very first paintings that was an epiphany in that regard was I did a very abstract horse, which is in the other card deck, The Way of the Horse, called Halcyon, and it's a blue ethereal effluus, whatever you want to call that, almost formless horse, just the face of a beautiful blue horse, and but almost floaty, like it looks like it's just underwater almost. And Halcyon is actually the name of, I chose the Halcyon because it's a synonym for peaceful. It's also it's a bird in mythology that makes its nest upon the waters, and wherever its nest is, that the waters are stilled and calm. And I saw the image as very peaceful. And a dear friend of my mom's and I was our minister, and she was also a counselor, and she bought the original painting. I was so thrilled, to sell an original painting was so exciting. And in the very beginning of my career, and she hung it behind her chair that she sat in when she was doing her counseling. And she said, when we went to visit her, like sometime later, she said, I moved that painting from my behind my chair for a while. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, a couple of people kind of said, well, I that the painting makes me uncomfortable. And she was like, gosh, it's beautiful. I can't imagine it's not, you know, dark in any way. So she moved it. And then she started thinking about it. She said, as the counselor, it occurred to me that if something was disturbing to them, they needed to look at what it was that was bringing up. And this was all, so intriguing to me because I really hadn't occurred to me. But I began, because I took my art to trade horse events. That was in the early part of my career when that was the best way to sell my art because I wanted to go directly to the public. I didn't want to show, I tried a few events through galleries, but then the problem with that was somebody would buy a painting. I'd never get to meet them. I never got to have a conversation with them about why I painted it. They never got to meet me. And I thought, heck, and besides, they took half the money, right? So I
Right.
thought, I'm just going to go right to the horse's mouth, as it were. So I went to horse events, and um, it was so interesting to be in this sort of mundane surroundings, at a trade show, at a horse event, and have people come up to my booth just expecting, some pretty pictures, and they'd look at my art and they would stop and they'd kind of get quiet and they'd stay a little longer than they'd expected. And if we had a conversation, we'd start talking about feelings. And I began realizing that there was more going on, that there was something the art evokes. And so I think that the two were just married in my awareness of horse and art combined, began to make me realize that I think the reason was that I truly, having not come from a horse show background, I never competed. I just wanted to be around horses, and that's the way I draw them. I draw their essence, not just what they do and who they are as a physically, it's beyond the physical beauty. The physical beauty is really more about from shining from within of who they are as a spirit, and then what form they take. But what happens is when people encounter that, it takes them out of their everyday, oh, I took that horse, out in the round pen and I did this or that with it, or this is the type of riding that I do, or any of that conversation about what we do with horses, and put them right back to the moment when they first fell in love with horses, and sometimes reminds them, hopefully, of who that person is and who that horse is, that is beyond all of that worldly conversation. And so I think those two things invite, and the card deck is intended to invite the reader and the looker, the listener, to embrace this incredible being that has been with us for countless millennia now. And we even looked back into not only human history, into the cave paintings and how that all started. Just the very fact that there were cave paintings and that they were mostly horses, and those horses weren't domesticated even remotely at that time. They were admired, and there's a lot of research to show that it wasn't because they were hunting horses that they were painting them. In fact, it was the opposite. So it was their wanting to shamanically embody that power. And so I want to return our awareness of horses to that sacred place, and art is a way of doing that.
That's a great vision. And yeah, I always, when you were talking, I was thinking about Werner Herzog's documentary film about the cave art that he got to make it. It was he was if you like you love or
Yeah.
hate. I think most people love Werner. He's a character. But anyway, beautiful. I think it's I can't remember the name of the documentary, but just
Is that
beautifully.
the Forgotten?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think I've seen that. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's again, it's as old as time, and these animals really are older than we are. They've been around longer.
Very much so.
Before we get in, because we can go, I have so many more questions, but can we talk about Romeo? Romeo, I've told you a little bit over
Yes.
email. He's one of these miniatures I work with. I've yet to own a horse, by the way. I've worked with, and so this is my gift.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I keep like, oh man, I keep like, will I someday? But you know what? It's just maybe more my journey. That I just because
Yeah.
I get to work with so many different horses this way. So
Right.
I met this beautiful. Actually, there are three miniatures I work with, and they're part of my equine assisted learning program. He's a 14-year-old. The woman, God bless her, got him at a kill pen, like so many horses and so many minis. Minis have, I don't know what your thoughts are. Minis have a tough time because they are so stereotyped into a certain way.
Right.
And I don't buy into it. Just like the breeds too, by the way, which I had a question for you. But
Yes.
could we pull a card for Romeo? He's I'm just still getting to know him. He's really super intelligent, and he's really willing to play and participate. And,
Yeah.
and I'm bringing him into some of the sessions with some of my clients, but
I'd love to.
I'm trying to learn more about him.
Yeah, we actually designed the deck to be a tool and guidance for the horses and people and interactions and relationships in our life. So that's a wonderful opportunity to look into that. And
Yeah. So
so let me get my
how would you go about pulling a card
Yeah,
for a horse?
I was thinking, yeah, exactly. Well, and actually it's there's a number of ways. So obviously we ask that we ask permission. So it's kind of a dialogue of you know how do you feel about your relationship, and do you have the right really to ask on behalf of another, and usually you can sense whether you have that rapport, like is there a way I can get an answer. And since the guidance is always for the benefit of, rather than the overriding another, that's usually a yes. So I would say that we have a yes. The minute you were talking about him, a lot of emotion welled up in me of just joy and excitement actually. So I take that as a yes. And I was thinking as well that so we can do a 3-card reading, which there's guidance and sample readings in the deck, and the guidance for doing readings in support of another we call the Namaste reading. It's a spread for honoring the light in another. And since you were describing what you were saying, I thought this would be perfect because it's 3 cards, and the first card is, what are the overarching influences regarding this horse? What is his name again?
Romeo.
Romeo. So overarching influences regarding Romeo. So he comes with a history, right? He comes with a story, his story of how he came and who he is with in his life now, but how he's come to your program and to himself in your program. And then the second card is, what do you need to know to support Romeo? And the third card is, what can you transform within yourself to support Romeo? So I think that's a really wonderful invitation. So as with any card deck, it doesn't matter how you pick them. People shuffle them or lay them out flat. Sometimes it's how much space do you have. Some people just, I like shuffling them just because it kind of gives the appearance of mixing them up, but they're mixed up no matter what you do.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Our deck is unique too in that there are no reversed cards. Some card decks have like a different meaning if it's upside down or whatever, but every card has its own message, and that as you found, can be interpreted from the art alone. So the first card is the overarching influence of Romeo. Find my page here. And what I do when I pick cards is I just kind of let my fingers move through them if I'm not laying them out on a deck. Oh, it's funny. I've got my eyes shut and the light from the top of my ceiling is shining on these cards and flashing them into my eyes like a movie. That's really interesting.
It is.
Okay, and then when my fingers land on one, it feels like they just don't want to move from there. So that's how I know which card to pick. Interesting. Okay, so there's the first card. I'll pick all three and then I'll show them. Second card, what do you need to know to support Romeo? The other thing that will happen, for instance, just happened just there, is when you're shuffling, a horse will jump out of the deck.
Oh,
and that's what just happened.
I knew something was going on.
I was having a hard time, like, where is this card? And it just went pop right out of the deck. Okay. Okay, and the third question is, and it really helps, I'm talking and blasting around, so I'm not very grounded. So it helps to become quiet and grounded and talk with the cards, from your heart. But it works either way.
I think it's working perfectly.
So the third question is, what can you transform within yourself to support Romeo? So what assistance does he need from you? And the beautiful thing about cards is you can't pick a wrong card. There is no such thing as wrong, and that every card has a message. That's all archetypal wisdom. So horses are really good at that, showing up. All right, so the first card I picked, which is overarching influences regarding Romeo, is called Ex Tenebris Lux. Ex Tenebris Lux is a Latin phrase that means from the darkness comes the light.
Mm. Yeah, I haven't seen this.
That's the key. Yeah, the key phrase. Sorry, what did you say?
I got it. Okay, I got it. I picked it out.
Oh yeah,
I got it on my deck here. Yes.
Yeah, look more closely in your.
Man, there's multiple horses in this.
Well, describe it to the reader. So yeah, to the listener, it's a herd of amazing, almost monochromatic herd of gray horses erupting out of this dark gray cloud, and in the center of the cloud is a huge swath of light illuminating these horses as they are coming towards you, galloping towards you. And the centermost horse is an amazing dapple gray horse that looks like he's coming right to your core. And out of his core, out of his chest, is a burst of light forming. And all of these horses are gray, and that will be made evident when I start reading the essay. But yeah, it's a very powerful card with all these horses.
This is incredible.
Tell me what your impression of it is.
Oh my God, so many different things coming up. So first of all, I just for the first time just put this together. This is the cover of all the cards. This one image of this,
the back image.
Yeah, this gray coming out of the light, this gray horse coming out of the light. So yeah, this gray horse coming out of the light is, I shared this with some of my friends when I got the deck, and they're like, that's Hunter. Hunter's the older gelding who I've been working with. They're like,
that's like his mentor, or his herd mate. Yeah.
And he's actually he's actually the guy that, the horse I work with, but I'm introducing War, and he's and Hunter's helping me you read my essay. Hunter's helping me kind of help
get the measure of
get Romeo. Yeah, get Romeo on board with this new kind of idea, because this is new. So yeah,
nice.
And they and Romeo is a shadowy dark color.
Okay.
So Hunter,
from the darkness comes the light.
Yeah. So right there, yeah. So yeah, please.
That's amazing.
Can you please read? I'm gonna.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna hear what you have to say.
So, Ex Tenebris Lux, from the darkness comes the light. The keys are shades of change, ages and stages, and tempered by time. The message for humankind is honor life's black and whites and all the grays in between. The message for horsekind is, we thank you for the light you have brought into this at times darkened world. our story. Long ago, we lived as spirit horses who danced among the clouds. There we galloped in ethereal meadows of cumulus billows and grazed among the windswept swirls of mares' tails. During a particularly dark storm, moist air jostled and spun, causing our energy to coalesce into the denser forms of earthly horses. Wearing the colors of the clouds that birthed us, we poured down from the sky in a maelstrom of crunching rain, bringing our light out of the darkness. Unlike most horses, we are born dark like the charcoal clouds of our heritage. Yet as we mature, our coats gradually transition through every shade of gray, from the slate hues of a hailstorm to the vivid white tops of thunderheads. Our ever-changing color chronicles the aging process. Once timeless spirits, we now embody the elements of time itself. Counsel from Ex Tenebris Lux. So let's see what I'll pull out for this situation, just so we don't get too long time-wise. We encourage you to step into the gray areas where there are absolutely no absolutes and the only constant is change. Being about either or as well as both and, we remind you to honor the shadows, the darks, and indeed the lights. We ask you to look most directly at the areas of your life that need more definition and boundaries or less. So for Romeo, what comes to mind as I read that is that he's come into a place and a time with you and you're heard that maybe is a little is a new experience for him, because perhaps he's like, what am I doing and where am I going with this? Like this is different than the usual horse human thing, right? I don't know what his other experiences have been like, but maybe it was more black and white, and this is more of a gray area. So it's a nuance, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's exactly it. I mean, it's just, he's picking it up, but it's like, this is not what he, Hunter also, same thing. It was like, Hunter was like, no, thank you, until finally, like, this is going to be fun and you get to participate. And then he's like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah. Like, we're actually looking for what you want to offer instead of what we might be, asking of you to rise to. And another sentence in this essay is, like one of us being the Ex Tenebris Lux herd, like us, you can embody your identity while maintaining a flexible vision that can change and shift with the perspective of time. So, and also Romeo is middle-aged, as horses are. You said he was 14 or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's kind of in that age where he still hopefully has some flexibility to see, that he has gifts that he's brought to this moment, and yet he's not quite an elder yet. So is Hunter older than him? Or?
Yeah, Hunter's 24, and
okay.
and he's seen it all. He's done it
right.
a lot, and we're working. Everybody in the barn comments how much better he looks overall physically. So I've done a lot of time and effort just trying to help him feel better physically. And
yeah.
And then now that he's feeling better, and that's where Romeo's still at that. He's getting there. That he's like, I'm ready to go. And that's when so that's why I wrote about that trail walk, because these are non-riding. Both of them have been riding horses. Even Romeo was a riding horse for a young girl for a while. But, so he has a lot of training, just like Hunter. But this is not something he's in his wheelhouse. So yeah, this is great.
Right.
I think this is a great card for. I'm gonna have to study this a little bit more. But now I have to ask, what's the second card?
Yeah, and what I was going to say is the other thing that we encourage you to do is go and read these essays to the horses, because as we know, they do hear us and they do understand our language and our pictures, our mental pictures, and show them the cards as well. Another thing I meant to mention just a moment ago before I get to the second card is you were asking how to do readings with the horses. And another way that's really magical is if you actually take the deck out. Sometimes people want to buy two decks. So you have a barn deck and an inside deck, because the horses want to touch. And I have found countless amazing experiences where horses not only will pick images, but but the way they engage with an image, it's not about their eyesight as much as the vibration. They touch their nose to it. They get really quiet, they get really still, and they receive insight. It's amazing. So please experience that, because it's just like once you've shown something to a horse, especially a work of art, you never go back. Like you're just going to start showing them stuff because they get it, right?
Oh, I got
Okay,
so
so
many assignments now. I have a lot of assignments, which is good.
yeah,
I need my
I love
assignment.
that. Okay, so the second card, let me find the essay of what we're doing here again, was Namaste. And it's what do you need to know to support Romeo? Okay, so
This is the card that jumped out at you, right?
this is the one that jumped out at me, which is interesting because it's about grounding. It's Hiraeth is the name, and Hiraeth is a Gaelic word for Mother Earth.
Can you show it to us?
Sure. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, Hiraeth.
Okay, yeah.
It's a white stallion pawing the ground and sniffing the ground. He's sensing everything in his environment and very curious.
Mm-hmm.
And Hiraeth is my understanding of it is like the Mother Earth, the home feeling. And the key phrase is letting the earth teach. So this is how you can support him, is letting the earth teach, barefooting it, come down to earth and getting grounded. Message for humankind: remember, you are all earthlings. And message for horse kind: it is your birthright to be naturally grounded. So part of the essay is, my senses allow me to converse with the world. The elements, seasons, and migrations are my guides. I learn from everything. Stones tell me of their journeys, some traveling vast distance over terrain and time, carried by glaciers now receding. The earth reveals signs of those who have come before, the well-trodden pathways of deer, scent tells left by the lynx and mouse, and a sapling oak springing to life from a squirrel's secret stash. Counsel from Hiraeth. In the before times, your people lived in direct skin-to-skin contact with the earth. This made taking a walk on the wild side a natural pace, a part of your daily life. It's funny because you introduced these horses to me by talking about your walk with them.
Oh yeah.
So this is really interesting.
It is.
Apparently that was a good idea.
They were having a ball. And Romeo too he was so happy.
I love that. Yeah. So this is all about connecting with the earth, which horses do naturally, but I would say, since this reading is saying, what does he need from you, is maybe he actually needs, they lose their grounding just like we do, especially in a new environment, a new herd, and with new people. So there's got to be.
We had a little blip in our technological devices, and this is where we picked up. This is awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm having a ball.
Me
so
too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, we were just talking. Yeah, you were in the middle.
We were talking about Romeo and how the card that he's picked is for him is about Hiraeth, letting the earth teach. And I was just starting to say that that what I was in reading this card just briefly to get the gist of it for you, I was thinking about how even though horses are naturally grounded and such incredible beings, they too can lose their grounding, especially in a new environment, a new herd, new people, a new vocation that he's being asked to embrace. And so I thought maybe this is saying, that there's something to be said for grounding and bringing to mind and feet the wisdom of the earth for him, taking time. Maybe this is asking an invitation of how you can support him. What you needed to know to support him is that perhaps doing some conscious grounding exercise and awareness with him and yourself before doing any activity or engaging. I don't know if you've been doing that, but it's always a good reminder for all of us. I forget to ground all the time.
100%. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually halfway in between something. I'm like, okay, now do.
Oh, yeah, you realize, oh, things are going a little south. Oh, it's because I'm not grounded.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
So that's
Good. Good.
very perfect. And bare feet on the ground. In the case of horses, it can also be talking about the feet. What do their feet need? Did they need a new way of trimming their feet? You know, we can go into all sorts of directions from this reading about being barefoot. You know, who knows? Could be anything but this was asking what you could need to support him. So keep in mind when you look back at this and read it for him, what pops out at you. And so the third card is what can you do to transform? What can you transform within yourself to support Romeo? So the card for this is Blue Horse.
Mm, okay. Yep.
It shows it's kind of an interesting series of imagery. So it's a blue foal floating up in the stratosphere above planet Earth in a bubble of like a womb. And there's also a blue horse behind the foal, and it's actually she's the same being. It's like her being born and her emerging into this blue being that's surrounding us. And there's all sorts of imagery in there which you can take time to look
Yeah.
into of
Lots.
Omega and the beginnings and the dreams of things. So, what can you transform within yourself? So, for Blue Horse, for you and what your transformation is to support him is Blue Horse is dreaming your world into being, having the blues, incubation, and reading the signs. Message for humankind, dream out loud, for when you do, wonders will appear from out of the blue. Message for horsekind, humankind has dreamed of you across space and time, but you are more than the dreamed. You are also the dreamer. What comes to mind as I read that is we think we have brought this horse, you know, perhaps you thought you had welcomed or invited this horse to come work with you, but perhaps he had a dream of working in this kind of work with you and manifested this in his own way to come and be with you and work with you. And how you can support him. So my story is I am the blue horse conceived in the transparent womb that exists between heaven and earth. I am the incubator of dreams and the conduit through which your intentions take shape. As the vibrations of your thoughts traveled from your world into mine, my blue eyes opened, holding within them the memories of all you and I are destined to become. And as I read that, I'm hearing it like as if Romeo is saying it. I'm holding within myself the memories of all you and I are destined to become. And the universe is the realm of ideas. The earth is the realm of form. I am the interface between the two. I just feel like this is him speaking somehow. It's not even, it's the blue horse through him.
Mm, mm.
He's telling you, I assist in the flow of communication between your imagination and its manifestation. My lessons are about receiving, listening, and timing. As you send your dreams and visions into the blue, a thought projection extends to the universe and through my realm. There I wait, listening for the ring of truth that emanates from your dreams of power. Once received, I amplify this truth and send it back as a sign that seemingly arrives from out of the blue. It also talks in the counsel from the blue horse about, have you become disconnected, depressed, or disrupted? Are you having the blues? I'm here to tell you that feeling blue can engender a state of calmness in which the energy needed to make choices becomes necessarily suspended. The blues slow you down when you're heading in the wrong direction or doing something counter to your life's purpose. So I would be really curious to find out what the blues have to do with you, or any feeling of your desire to receive the communication from him.
Yeah, this is making me really think. I don't have a good answer here right now.
That's what
Yeah,
is a great place to be in,
yeah,
because often, we don't know what this means until we go out and ask the horse,
yeah.
and that's when the conversation really starts.
Yeah, so I mean, this is very mythological. I mean, there's a lot in this card here. Just looking at this card, there's a looks like there's a human eye. Is that a
There's a human eye, and there's a the symbol for alpha, which is the beginning, and like the molecules
yeah,
of the atom.
yeah,
And the kanji symbol is one that means like dreaming
mm,
and home and making your own reality.
yeah. But yeah, the question that's coming out is, where did you get stuck in the process of bringing your dreams to life? Yeah, that's a good, I'm still in that process. So this is, good for me. And here's Romeo that shows up.
Yes.
So yeah.
And I always love that we think that we're the ones that, have brought the horses or saved the horses or invited them to work with us. And I do believe that they call us to them. And that's always been my experience.
No accidents the fact I did have more questions about Dharma for even that experience, and the Arabians, that story you told Warwick. I was like, oh, there's something more there. But I just, as we're, thank you so much for taking all this time, and maybe I can continue another time. But
Yeah, I'd love to talk with
I
you.
have a few more. Thank you. I have a few more questions as we just kind of wrap up, and kind of we've talked so much about how to use this deck and this masterpiece in your life, but there's a lot of anxiety in the world, and how do you think the next energy will appear with the horse's help? How are the horses guiding us now as we've gone through a lot of transitions from these horses as working animals, to our travel or uses for travel, and then to recreation. And are they now appearing more as spiritual advisors to us? How do you see the next iteration of the spirit of the horse for us as
Yeah,
humans?
I think that we're all of us are learning, and hopefully this deck will assist in that awakening, is that um, that everything that we think we're we wanted to do or be with horses or other beings in our life as well is um, we have these ideas that are set in stone sometimes, and or that evolve because of society's uh, view. When you get a horse and people say, oh, what are you going to do with it? What form of riding are you going to have, or where are you going to keep it? And my experience with horses was that they led the way to a new lifestyle that I hadn't anticipated or ever uh, had foreseen for myself. So they just seem to be these incredible catalysts for so much change and growth. And I hope that people will start to awaken to being open to that, instead of the horse having to conform and become always the fitting in a box of what literally the box of the stall, even of how we keep them, how we think that they are in our lives, and that those people who at some level know that horses have a message for them, whether they're in their lives or not, that they take stock and open to that wisdom, because there's just so much now. I mean, from even like Linda Kohanoff, I was listening to one of her interviews recently, and she was saying, even 20 years ago, you couldn't have this conversation without people rolling their eyes and saying, what are you talking about? So as we all know, time and consciousness is speeding up, and I think the horse is the being that that has chosen to accompany us in ways that they don't just because of their domesticity, they tolerate and they cohabitate and they try to fit into our world, but we neglect their world to our detriment, to we neglect their consciousness. And it's so exciting to see so much change happening in lifestyle and awareness of horse behavior and language, and that they're trying to communicate at every turn, and how can we understand them better. Um and it's not just about, who they are to entertain us, but who they are as a sentient being. One of my favorite movies, I'm going to have to get the name of it. um I can't remember the name of it, but it was a very evocative science fiction movie, where there was these scientists, and these beings had arrived from another planet, and they seemed really threatening, and they seemed really suspicious and miraculous. They were these big black sort of amorphous creatures, and this one scientist discovered that they were actually trying to communicate. She began having dreams, and when she was drawing them, she would get these messages from the drawings, and she realized that they were communicating. It was just in a way that she didn't understand. And when she began understanding it, that she couldn't convince anybody else of it. So I loved that movie because it was, to me, it was like the same with the horse. There's this vast wealth of knowledge, and what we don't realize is what's so beautiful about it is their social dynamic, and their essence is about community and herd, and what's the well-being of the group, and how can I contribute, and what are my gifts, and it's not a hierarchy, and all of these incredible holistic principles that we really have ways now of interpreting and understanding the more we learn from them. And you get that whether you're a scientist or not. Just go sit in their presence with a journal or a pencil or or a drawing or a sketchbook, and see what happens. It's just amazing.
It is amazing. It is. There's no amount of learning. I mean, there's this limitless learning every time I'm with any horse. There's something always being offered as a lesson. And if only if I'm willing, some days I'm not. No, some days I'm like, we're just doing it. We're gonna just do it.
Right.
I get nothing out of that usually. But yeah, it's so much fun talking to you. Maybe someday I'll be lucky enough to meet you. But hey, can you just remind everyone how to find you and how to find this beautiful book of this deck of cards and guidebook?
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes. My website is spiritofhorse.com, spiritofhorse.com. And I also have an eCards website, which is really fun. That's animated visions of my art with poetry. And the card deck, the Council of Horses Oracle, is available worldwide through booksellers, online, and also I do sell signed copies on my website. So I love sending those with a little blessing out into the world. And my work is available in print and original pastels, and many of these pieces will also be available for sale. I'm gradually trickling them out into the world, and the card deck is its own little gallery, so people will love having this a way of accessing horse wisdom. And I'm so grateful to the project, and to Sandra, and to Inner Traditions, our publisher, for having the faith in us. They don't really do a whole lot of other horse guided books or cards, so it was really a leap of faith for them. So I'm so thrilled that we're out there. It's so exciting, and we're just now getting these little, these beautiful glimpses of what people are experiencing. Just even doing this reading with you is like another layer of how it's so exciting. They're working. They actually work.
It's they are alive. They are so alive.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
great. Hey, all right. Well, so, yeah, I'm going to twist your arm and see if you can introduce me to Sandra, because now I have some more questions for her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'd love to talk to you some more. Thank you so much, and I thank Marianne Simons for introducing me to
Please
you.
do. Yes, she's always held a special place in my heart, and has always been so complimentary about my writing and my art. And she's such an amazing, talented horse interpreter. I'm honored to be introduced, and I'm excited about the work that you're doing with autistic children and horses. It's just talk about finding a language. That's got to be fascinating.
It's been such a gift, but I'm just tapping the surface right now. But I'll have more questions, and so to be continued. Till next time.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. That interview, I can't believe I got to have that conversation with Kim. And I do want to talk to her more, but guess what? I am planning to speak with Sandra Wallen, co-author and creator of this beautiful 40-card deck and guidebook called The Council of Horses Oracle. So stay tuned, and please check me out at my own website to learn more about what I'm doing. It's at Cameron Adibi, so that's CamronAdibi.com. And please stay tuned, and thanks again.